belly and thighs.
Daniel chapter 2,
32.
32. And it says, this image's head was of fine gold, and his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and his thighs of brass. His
Jump to 39.
39 says, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth.
So brass, that's stronger than silver, but less valuable than silver.
And that actually, if you go to Daniel, that's going into the Greeks, which were known as the brass kingdom. Okay?
Yeah, it's just a different symbol, that's all.
Right. Daniel chapter 8 and 20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Verse 21. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and a great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Okay, Alexander the Great.
Was that verse 8?
That was Daniel 8 and 21.
It says here in the commentary, did you get verse 8 too?
Yeah.
Daniel 8 and 8?
Daniel 8 and verse 8 says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and from it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. Okay, those four notable ones that came out of the Greek Empire, that was known as the Diadochi. The Diadochi were four generals that served under Alexander the Great. Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus.
This is in this commentary here. Daniel 8 and 8. The large horn was broken. Alexander the Great died at the height of his career before he was 33 years old. Four notable horns after Alexander's death. Four of his generals carved up the Macedonian Empire. Antigonus ruled from northern Syria to Central Asia. Cassander ruled over Macedonia. Ptolemy ruled in Egypt, in southern Syria, including Palestine. Lysimachus ruled over Thrace. Yeah, it says, okay. Later on, you end up getting Antiochus IV.
Yep.
You might as well jump to that in 1 Maccabees 1.
Yeah, I got it right here. First Maccabees 1 and 1, and it happened after that Alexander, the son of Philip of Macedon, who came out of the land of Chittim, and had smitten Darius, the king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead in the first over Greece. Verse 7, jump down to verse 7, it says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. 8, and it says, and his servants bare rule every one in his place, and after his death they put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied on the earth.
Keep reading.
It says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks.
It tells you right there in Greeks. So when a Christian comes up and we tell him who's that, we should ask him who's that third king.
Yeah, where's that third beast at? That's what I was explaining to this bug out Christian the other day. You don't know who the Gentiles are because you removed one of the beasts from the Bible. You removed a third of this book you just ripped out 300 years of history that you don't even know about. Now you want to act like you know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay? You don't know about Alexander the Great. You don't know about Antiochus Epiphanes. You don't know about the Seleucian Empire. Right? You don't know about Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay? You don't know about the Maccabees and the Maccabean revolt. You don't know that the Maccabean family started a revolt and they fought against Israelites that had made a covenant with the Greeks to live after their manner and sacrifice after their manner. Didn't Matthias Maccabeus slaughter an Israelite as he was walking up to make a sacrifice to consent unto what was his name? To consent unto the king?
Yeah.
Literally, Matthias Maccabeus is literally in the middle of telling you, no, we're not going to bow down to you. And a nigga walked up right next. I can imagine it. He walked up right next to him with a sacrifice to sacrifice on an unclean beast on an altar, and Matthias killed the nigga right on the spot. Okay, so this is why you get into the New Testament, and those of the circumcision, the Pharisees and the Zealots and all these different sects were the descendants of those people who did not consent unto the Greeks and fought and died and were suffering under trying to keep the temple alive, trying to keep the law within Israel. And they hated those who consented unto the Greeks and made a covenant and a pact with them. And as a matter of fact, it says in verse 11, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well, and certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. See, the Israelites that kept to the law, statutes, commandments, suffered and died for it. Their descendants were the Pharisees, the Zealots, the circumcision. And they looked at those Israelites who their ancestors betrayed the law, statutes, and commandments, and they looked at them as a no people. They looked at them as they were Gentiles, heathen. They were cut off. And this is why Paul was sent to them to let them know, come back, repent. Your parents consented unto the Greeks. But guess what? Now you can come back. And that's what Paul is writing to. Okay?
I got this commentary in the King James Study Bible. It says on down, basically says the same thing, but on down it says about the four generals. The ensuing years saw continuous power struggles in this area of the road from the succession of these generals. Now we can jump to Daniel 7 and 6.
Daniel 7,
verse 6.
Verse 6. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Okay, if you look at that First Maccabees again, and you read verse 9, First Maccabees 1 and 9, it says, after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, and so did their sons after them many years. That's what you call dynasties. This was the Seleucid dynasty, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and Daniel chapter 11 is about the Syrian wars between the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. It says, and evils were multiplied on the earth. That's the fulfillment of Job 9 and 24. Job 9:24 says the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. Okay? The wicked are the Edomites. The Greeks taking over power in the earth, overflowing the Medes and the Persians. That's the fulfillment of Job 9 and 24. That's why it says evils were multiplied on the earth. Evils weren't multiplied on the earth until the Edomites came into power. Okay, the Greeks under Alexander.
So since they're a leopard, because of how quick Alexander took all the vast territory.
Yep.
And he even how he fought. He went to battle. It's rumored how quick he was. The Lord gave him the spirit to be able to do all that in a fast amount of time. And it's rumored that he put a leopard on his horse. So we can jump. I got a commentary here. For Daniel 7 and 6, it says, if the second beast of Daniel's dream represents Medo-Persian Empire in verse 5, the leopard represents Greece. 4 symbolizes universality. C4 wings for verse These are synonymous with speed. The Greeks, under the leadership of Alexander the Great, rapidly conquered the known world. 4 heads describes the heads of government. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals into 4 different parts: Macedonia, Egypt, Syria, and Thrace. This Bible commentary here, when I say Bible commentary, it's just this black one. It says, for Daniel 7:6, like a leopard represents the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great. After his death, the empire had 4 heads: Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, and Macedonia. So same thing there. It says in this, the King James, it says, for 7 and 6, the leopard depicts Greece. Though naturally a swift animal, this leopard had 4 wings in addition to its native agility. This speaks of the lightning speed with which Alexander the Great, from 336 to 323 BC, conquered the ancient world. The number 4 represents the 4 generals who divided up his kingdom after his death. It says the forms of Greek rule and influence likely lasted longer than the combined rule of the Medes and Persians. So that's why they were given the brass, because brass was stronger. They technically didn't rule as long as the Medes and Persians, but they still technically did, because they still came back up as the Romans, technically speaking. We can go back to Daniel 2 and get 33.
Daniel chapter 2 and verse 33 says, his legs of iron and his feet, it says his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay.
That was 33?
Yep.
Read it again.
His legs of iron.
The legs of iron. It says right there, once again, that's the 4th kingdom, technically speaking. Daniel 7 describes the 5th kingdom, which technically is part of the 4th one, as a little horn. This one in Daniel describes it with America, that would be, technically speaking, the 5th kingdom, but technically not, because it's the same as the 4th kingdom. It describes it as the feet and toes. So it says here, let me see what I got here. Alright, we can jump to Daniel 2 and 40.
Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. And the 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise.
Now let's go to Daniel 7, 17 to 18.
Daniel chapter 7 and 17. And it says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever.
So right there, it says these are kingdoms.
And you could also precept to that is Daniel 2 and 44. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom should not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever.
Can you read 40 again?
40?
Yeah.
In verse 2?
Yeah.
Or chapter 2?
Yeah.
It says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things.
You just stopped it. It just said kingdom, you see?
Yep.
So it says, commentary here. Daniel 2:39. How long have you been going?
Been about hour 50. Somewhere around 2 hours, I think, because this one's been going for 15 minutes, and then I think when mine stopped, it had like hour 50 on it.
This is Daniel 2:39 for this commentary. The image that Nebuchadnezzar saw in verse 31 to 35 represented 4 kingdoms that would rule over all the earth. The first worldwide empire, the head of gold, was Babylon. Verse 38, the second empire, the chest and arms of silver, was Medo-Persia. The third empire, the belly and thighs of bronze, verse 32, would be Greece, which we just went into that.
Yep.
The fourth empire, the legs of iron, verse 33, is only one not identified with the book of Daniel. Rome is the most likely choice. But technically it is, because you go to the New Testament,
yep,
it mentions the Romans.
Well, if I could add, the New Testament from Matthew to Revelation is the account of what happened to the Israelites within that fourth beast. Okay, so we're tracking what is going on inside of that fourth beast. All right.
Rome is likely the most likely choice for its succeeded Greece. Strong as iron, the Roman Empire was marked by strength, but it was destructive strength. I'm going to jump to verse 40. Open up.
I got one.
Okay.
Daniel 7:23, it says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces." Just like where it said in verse 40. Okay. Yep. As iron. It says, "As iron subdueth all things, and as iron breaketh all these, and shall it break in pieces and bruise."
We can go back to Daniel 7.
Yep.
7.
Daniel 7:7 says, "After this I saw in a night vision, in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue of the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns."
You get the ancient 10 horns.
Yeah. Those are on this phone. Let me get 10 horns. Okay, so you had basically 10, but what were called barbarian tribes. You want the
Let's get the ancient ones. So you notice it's going to say mention 10 horns is also about the apocalyptic kingdom that's going to come in the end times. That's an indication that both of these beasts are the same beast.
There were the 10 barbarian tribes of Europe. It's loading slow, Slacky. Okay, it says the 10 barbarian tribes are 1, the Goths, 2, the Vandals, 3, the Huns, 4, the Franks, 6, the Saxons, 5, the Saxons, 6, the Lombards, 7, the Suebi, 8, the Burgundians, 9, the Alemanni, and 10, the Visigoths.
So what was the first one?
The Goths.
So who the Goths would be?
The Goths would be, they were a Germanic tribe, okay? So they would be like Western Germany. So the Goths and the Visigoths were also known as the Goths and the Ogoths or Ultra-Goths. They were both Gothic, but they were Germanic tribes that lived, okay, during that time. Okay, they're basically the same people, but they're basically split into two halves. The second one is the Vandals.
And tell them who those would be today.
So the Vandals, okay, were the ones they were actually the tribes that actually helped to bring military campaigns against Rome when it was falling, okay? And let me load this up real quick. This is going slow. But basically, the Vandals are they lived in Poland, and they actually migrated down to Italy at the time of the fall of Rome, and they fought against the Romans. Okay, so you have them all over the place, but they're mainly in Italy, northern Italy, and eastern Poland. Basically, those Eastern European bloc nations.
And then the third one?
The third one. The third one is the Franks, I believe.
And who would those be today?
Sorry, the Huns. So the Huns were a nomadic tribe of Asiatic. The Huns were a nomadic tribe of Asiatic warriors. Okay, they don't really have like a specific country that they belong to today because they were nomadic, but they were actually one of the 10. They were considered one of the 10 barbarian tribes. Okay. The fourth one is the Franks. Okay, the Franks are also Germanic. Okay, but they controlled a lot of Luxembourg and northern France and West Germany. Saxons, those would be your British today. Okay, you have two different Saxons. You have the Anglo-Saxons and then the regular Saxons. Saxons means sons of the covenant, okay, or sons of Isaac. Okay, sons of Isaac were actually Jacob and Esau. So if an Edomite tells you that they're a Saxon, they're technically correct. The difference between an Anglo-Saxon and a Saxon is the Anglo-Saxon is technically Jacob. Okay? The sixth is the Lombards. The Lombards, I believe those were also Italians. Okay, they also inhabited parts of Italy. All of these tribes technically had their start in like Western Germany. They're all Germanic, which means the languages they spoke were German, Gothic languages. English came out of there. So the Lombards were actually a Germanic tribe. The Suebi, okay. In my studies, I believe that it said that they were actually a Germanic group. They migrated to the Iberian. So that would be like the Spanish and the Portuguese. So from Spain down to Portugal. The Burgundians, also a Germanic tribe that settled in the region now known as France and Switzerland. So those are Nordic peoples. The Alemanni, a Germanic group that settled in the region of Alsace, now France, in southwestern Germany. And the Visigoths, which were a western branch, they were both Germanic, western branch of the Goths, which were the opposite of the Ogoths, or the Ultra-Goths, established in the kingdom of Spain, Gaul, and after the Spain and Gaul, and migrated from the Balkans, which were the Eastern Bloc.
So I've got some commentary on Daniel 7 and 7. The fourth beast did not look like any known animal, since this beast follows Greece. In verse 6, it may represent Rome, which it does. And then I got some history here on that, about the Roman Empire. It says in Daniel 7 and 7 that it was dreadful and terrible. So a reason for that I put in Google, why was Rome the scariest empire of its time? And it says, while not necessarily the scariest in terms of horror fiction, the Roman Empire gained a reputation for being formidable and at times brutal power, which instilled fear in its contemporaries and those who opposed it. Here are some reasons why. Military prowess and discipline. Professional war machine, the Romans developed a highly trained and disciplined military force known as the Roman legions. Unlike anything seen before, rigorous training, Roman soldiers underwent extensive training, including daily weapons drills, hand-to-hand combat practice, and grueling marches. Effective tactics, their structured army and precise battle formations, such as the testudo or turquoise formation, made them incredibly effective in warfare. Adaptability. The Romans were quick to adapt and innovate, like building a naval based on a captured Carthaginian ship and inventing the corvus during the First Punic War to turn naval battles into running battles. The second thing is their brutality and intimidation. Crucifixion as punishment. The Romans were used crucifixion as a means to torture and to send a message to those who challenged their authority. Decimation. This rare but brutal military punishment involved killing 1 in 10 soldiers in a unit, guilty of crimes like mutiny or desertion, intended to instill fear and enforce obedience. Harsh treatment of conquered peoples. The conquest of Gaul, for instance, resulted in the deaths of over 1 million Celts and the enslavement of another 500,000, demonstrating the potential consequences of resistance. Bloody games. The Roman circuses featured gruesome entertainment like gladiatorial combats and wild animal fights, showcasing violence to the public. Cruel emperors. Some Roman emperors like Caligula and Nero were known for their cruelty and tyrannical behavior. Another reason is their psychological warfare. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's elite guard known for their power and willingness to overthrow or even assassinate emperors, could be a source of fear and instability. Systematic persecution. The Romans engaged in religious persecution, such as Nero's persecution upon Christians, which involved horrific acts like being torn apart by dogs or burned alive. In summary, the Roman Empire was considered a terrifying power due to its superior military and its use of brutal punishments and intimidation tactics, and the potential for cruelty within society. So that's that dreadful and terrible.
I got some information on that too. I just typed in Google, did the Romans use the Greek phalanx? And it says, yes, the early Romans did use the phalanx formation. And at the time, the phalanx formation was a formidable weapon against their enemies. It says, similar to the Greek style, before developing their more flexible manipular system, the early Romans army, before 390 BC, was organized as a single closely packed phalanx, using spears as their weaponry, as their primary weapon. This formation was adopted from the Etruscans. If you know anything about history, the Etruscans were the original Romans. Those were not Edomites. Those were Japheth, okay? And it says, who in turn were influenced by the Greeks.
I'm going to just fix this for a second.
Oh, go ahead. I can get some more on that. It says, however, after a significant defeat by the Gauls, which were one of those 10 tribes that I read off. And if you go here, those 10 tribes, right? The Goths, Vandals, Huns, Franks, Saxons, Lombards, Suebi, Burgundians, Alemanni, and the Visigoths. Okay, those were the 10 nations that eventually became the European Union. Okay, it started off known as the ECC. Okay, those are the 10 horns, which are 10 kings. Okay, it says they came together in 1957. The Treaty of Rome, signed on March 25th, 1957, established the European Economic Community, ECC, aiming to foster closer economic ties and integration among its member states. It laid the foundation for what would eventually become the European Union, focusing on creating a common market for goods, services, people, and capital. So basically Esau was coming together, teaming up to try to take over the world. All right? And that was the start of it, the ECC, which were those ancient 10 barbarian tribes.
It mentioned in Daniel 7, verse 7, it was strong exceedingly. So I put in Google, the word exceedingly has its roots in Latin and Old French. It signifies something being very greatly or very much. The core of the word stems from the Latin excedere, meaning to go beyond or to surpass. The Latin term combines ex, meaning out, and sedere, meaning to go. The English word exceed is also derived from the same Latin roots. Just as iron is stronger than brass, less precious but stronger. That's iron. I Googled, is iron more valuable than brass? And it said generally brass is more valuable than iron in the context of scrap metal prices. Iron being a ferrous metal is more common and thus typically valued lower than non-ferrous metals, like brass. At scrap yards, brass being an alloy of copper and zinc is considered a non-ferrous metal and is generally more expensive. So yes, it says, brass is more valuable than iron. Ancient Rome conquered significantly more territory than Greece, while Alexander the Great's empire briefly encompassed a vast area. It was short-lived. The Roman Empire, on the other hand, endured for centuries and conquered a massive territory spanning from Britain to Egypt and from Spain to the Middle East.
Also known as the Fertile Crescent.
If you want, we can end it here.
Sure, we can go and pick up on our room because we got over 2.5 hours already. All right. So with that, we're going to close out. Hopefully this was edifying. Continue on in the next one, Lord will. And give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rekapadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us this truth according to the Bible, which is Shalom and Abba Ball.